I'm standing in a room full of people who smell like perfume and desperation, and my old suit is doing all the talking. Not the kind of talking you want at a moment like this. The seams are frayed. The color. It's seen better decades. But here's the thing, I don't care, and I never did. My name is Walter Clark, and I'm 71 years old, about to watch my entire life's work get divided up like slices of pie. The conference room smells like leather and anticipation. You can taste the greed hanging in the air. My son sits across from me, trying not to make eye contact. His wife, Marissa, is examining her nails like they're more interesting than anything that's about to happen. She wears a coat that probably costs more than my truck. She always does. Then she looks up. Really looks at me. And she smiles. Not a warm smile, the kind that reaches your eyes. No, this is the smile you give to something that's beneath you. Something expired. Her voice cuts through the room like a knife, and she says it just loud enough for everyone to hear. Couldn't even afford a new jacket, huh? The room erupts. People laugh. I hear them. Some try to hide it behind their hands. Others don't even bother. My son Derek, he just sits there with this weak smile plastered on his face like he's embarrassed to be seen with me. He doesn't say a word. Not one word to defend his own father. That moment right there. That's when I knew everything was about to change. If you believe that respect matters more than riches, hit that like button right now. What you're about to watch isn't just a story about money. It's about what happens when you choose dignity over greed. And trust me, it gets wild. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. I straighten my jacket, button it slow and deliberate, and I take my seat at the end of the long wooden table. I'm calm. I'm silent. Most people don't understand that silence can be louder than any words you could ever say. I've been humiliated before. Life stripped me down. Loss broke me. But never, not once, had my own blood done it. The lawyer enters, Mr. Pierce. He's been with me for 30 years. He knows every secret in this room and the ones nobody's even thinking about yet. He looks at me, just for a second, and I give him a small nod. He understands. He sits down and clears his throat. And that's when everything stops. Mr. Pierce says, as per Mr. Clark's final instructions, we are now going to proceed with the reading of his last will and testament. Marissa sits up straighter. Her eyes get bright. Derek unfolds his hands and folds them again. They're nervous now. They should be. But what happens next? It's going to blow this whole thing wide open. Let me take you back to where this all started, because you can't understand a man like me without understanding the small town where I learned what it really means to be somebody. I'm talking about the kind of place where your worth wasn't measured by how much money you had in the bank. It was measured by whether people could trust you to show up when things got hard. My father was a man named Henry Clark. He came back from World War II changed. Not broken, exactly, but shaped by things no man should ever have to see. He worked at the steel mill, same job for 35 years. Never complained. Never called in sick unless he was actually dying. He had this thing he used to tell me, and I can still hear his voice like it was yesterday. Walter, you'll know a man by how he treats you when he doesn't need you. That stuck with me. Deep. You know why? Because it was true then, and it's true now, and it'll be true long after I'm gone. My mother was the quiet strength in the house. She didn't say much, but when she did, you listened. She made sure I understood that our last name meant something. It meant we kept our word. It meant we worked hard and we didn't make excuses. When money was tight, she'd stretch $1 so far you'd think it was made of rubber. She never let us feel poor, even when we were. By the time I was 14, I was working at that same steel mill, sweeping floors and learning everything I could watch the older men do. I was hungry, not just for money, but for knowledge. For a way to build something that was mine. Something that would matter. At 20, I was still there, but now I was watching the machines, studying the systems, asking questions nobody wanted to answer. The old-timers thought I was crazy. They'd tell me, "Walter, just do your job, collect your check, and go home." But I couldn't. Something inside me wouldn't let me. I spent nights reading about engineering. Weekends taking classes. I'd come home covered in grease and exhaustion, and all I could think about was building something different. Something better. Something that could change the whole game. That's when I met Eleanor. She walked into a diner where I was eating a sandwich at the counter, and she ordered coffee. I don't believe in fate, but if I did, I'd say fate was sitting right next to me that day. She wasn't impressed by me. She wasn't impressed by anything, actually. She just saw a guy covered in grime who looked like he was trying to figure out the meaning of life over a ham sandwich. We talked for 2 hours. She was a teacher. She had dreams just like I did. Big ones. And when I finally got up the nerve to ask her to dinner, she said yes, but only if I showed up on time and didn't talk about machinery all night. I was in love before the appetizers arrived. By 30, I had saved every penny I could. Eleanor was teaching full-time, and we had this one crazy idea. What if we started our own company? What if we took everything we knew about metalwork and manufacturing and built something nobody had seen before? Our friends thought we were insane. Our families weren't sure. But Eleanor looked at me one night in our tiny apartment and she said, "Do it. I believe in you." That was all I needed. Clark Metalworks started in a warehouse that smelled like rust and broken dreams. But it was ours. And everything changed the moment we opened that door. The first few years nearly killed us both. Eleanor worked full-time as a teacher and came home to help me in the workshop until midnight. I'd be there at dawn, building, learning, failing, trying again. We had almost no money. We ate a lot of eggs and pasta. We laughed about being poor because laughing was cheaper than crying. But something was working. Something real was happening in that warehouse. I'd figured out a system for precision metalwork that competitors couldn't touch. Nothing revolutionary. Nothing that would make the news. But it was efficient, it was reliable, and it saved companies money. Word spread. Slowly at first, then faster. By the time I was 35, we had contracts rolling in from factories across the Midwest. We had employees. Real employees with families depending on their paychecks. That meant everything to me. By 40, Clark Metalworks was worth millions. We moved into a real office. Eleanor and I finally had a house with a yard. And then, life gave us what we'd been praying for. Derek was born. I remember holding that baby and thinking, this is it. This is what it's all for. I wanted to give him everything I never had. A good education. Security. Freedom from worry. I thought if I just worked hard enough, built big enough, made enough money, then my son would never have to feel the kind of pressure I felt growing up. I was wrong about a lot of things. Derek was smart. Sharper than me, actually. He was ambitious. He had this hunger for success that reminded me of myself. I was proud of him. I paid for the best schools, private tutoring, everything. He went to college on scholarship anyway because Eleanor insisted he learn what it meant to earn something. He came home one semester talking about this woman named Marissa. She was from money, real money. Her father owned commercial real estate. Her mother designed jewelry for rich people. From the moment I met her, something felt off. The way she looked at our house, at my old work boots by the door, at my hands, rough and scarred from decades of work. She smiled like you smile at something that hasn't met your standards yet. Derek didn't see it. Or he didn't want to see it. When you're that age, love makes you blind to a lot of things. They got married young, and suddenly my son wasn't coming home as much anymore. When he did, Marissa came with him, always scanning the place like she was taking inventory of what could be upgraded. The company kept growing. The contracts kept coming. But something was changing at home, and I could feel it happening like watching the sun go down, gradual until suddenly it's dark. Eleanor used to tell me, "Don't lose yourself chasing success, Walter. Money has a way of making people forget what matters." I'd kiss her forehead and say, I know. But I didn't really listen. I was too focused on making sure Derek had every opportunity one never did. Looking back, I gave him too much. Money has this power over people. It corrupts when gratitude disappears. And by the time I realized what was happening, my son's gratitude was already gone. The real trouble was just beginning. Then Eleanor got sick. Not a little sick. The kind of sick that changes everything. I remember the doctor's words like they were carved into the walls of my mind. "It's serious," he said. "We'll do what we can, but..." That "but" could have filled an ocean. We fought it for 2 years. Eleanor kept teaching as long as she could. She kept smiling. She kept believing we'd beat this thing. But deep down, we both knew. When she passed, it felt like someone turned off all the lights in the world. I didn't really come back from that for a long time. I went to work. I ran the company. I did all the things you're supposed to do. But inside, I was just going through the motions. The noise was gone. The light was gone. Everything felt like watching life through frosted glass. Derek was grieving too, but in a different way. After the funeral, after the relatives left, he came to me with this look in his eyes. It wasn't sadness. It was calculating. He said they were moving into a new house across town. A bigger house. A better house, according to Marissa. That's when I started seeing the real picture. Marissa wanted things. Designer things. Expensive things. And my son, he was trying to give her everything, which meant he was starting to look at Clark Metalworks differently. Not as my legacy, but as his ticket to showing her the lifestyle she wanted. I noticed it in small ways first. Comments about updating the company. Suggestions about selling certain divisions. Conversations with private equity guys I'd never met. Then the comments got louder. The suggestions turned into pushes. The conversations became arguments. Derek would come to the office with his tie and his ambition, and he'd say things like, "Dad, you need to think about the future. We should modernize. We should expand. We should sell." And I'd tell him, "We are the future, Derek. We built this with our hands and our principles. I'm not selling to private equity firms so you can impress a woman who doesn't respect where the money comes from." He'd get angry. He'd say I didn't understand business anymore, that I was living in the past, that I was holding him back from his potential. And maybe he was right about some of it. But he was also wrong about the parts that mattered most. One afternoon, I can still see the way the sun was coming through the office window. Derek stormed in with financial proposals printed out. Plans drawn up. He'd already been talking to buyers. Already been negotiating without telling me. He said, "It's time you stepped back, Dad. Let me handle this. You built something amazing, but it's over now. Let me take it to the next level." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I'd given everything to, and I realized I didn't know him anymore. I told him no. I told him Clark Metalworks wasn't for sale. Not to him, not to anyone. And I told him if he couldn't respect that, he couldn't be part of the company anymore. I fired my own son from his family's legacy. He walked out, and he didn't come back. 4 years. That's how long Derek and I didn't speak. 4 years of silence and distance and this empty space where love used to be. I kept building. I kept working. Clark Metalworks kept growing, but now I was doing it all alone, and honestly, it felt hollow. I'd succeeded in everything except keeping my family together. I'd built an empire and lost my son in the process. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had conversations with myself a lot back then, wondering if I should reach out, wondering if I'd been too hard on him, wondering if I'd made a mistake pushing so hard about his principles when maybe he was just trying to survive in his own way. But then I'd remember the look on his face when he talked about selling, the hunger in his eyes. And I'd remember Eleanor's voice, "Don't lose yourself chasing success, Walter." And I'd remember my father's words about knowing a man by how he treats you when he doesn't need you. Derek needed me when he wanted my company. He didn't need me when I became an obstacle to his ambition. Then one winter morning, everything shifted again. I was in the workshop, which had become my sanctuary. The same place where Derek used to follow me around as a kid, asking questions about everything, watching how I worked. I was fixing one of the old machines, the same one I'd been fixing for 30 years, and this pain just exploded in the left side of my head. The next thing I remember is waking up in a hospital bed with doctors explaining something about a stroke. A mild stroke, they said. A warning sign. Not a death sentence, but close enough to one to make you think. And that's when Derek showed up. He came through the door with flowers like we were friends, and this expression on his face like he was performing a scene he'd rehearsed. Behind him stood Marissa in a pearl-white coat that probably cost more than my monthly salary, and she had this look like she'd just inherited Christmas. She leaned toward me and said, "You need to rest now, Mr. Clark. Derek and I will handle things from here. Not, how are you feeling? Not, we're so glad you're going to be okay. Just straight to the business of handling things." That was the moment I understood everything. My son didn't come to see if I was alive. He came because news travels fast when there's a will and a $55 million company waiting to be inherited. My daughter-in-law didn't care if I recovered. She cared about shopping bags and country clubs and finally being able to tell her mother they were set for life. I almost laughed. And in that hospital bed, with Marissa's calculated smile burning in my mind and Derek's weak apologies washing over me, something inside me changed. If they were willing to show their true colors while I was still breathing, I thought, what would they do when I wasn't? That's when I decided they were about to learn the most expensive lesson of their lives. And they had no idea what was coming. The recovery took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of physical therapy, doctors checking on me, nurses making sure I could walk straight and remember my own name. But what nobody was checking on was my mind. And that's where all the real work was happening. Derek visited twice. Both times Marissa came with him, and both times they were already talking about next steps and planning ahead, while I was still figuring out how to button my own shirt. They'd sit in those uncomfortable chairs by my bed and ask questions that weren't really questions. They were fishing. Trying to figure out if I was going to make it, how long I had, whether now was a good time to talk about the company. The second visit, a nurse came in to help me with some exercises. Nothing heavy, just walking down the hallway and back. When Derek saw how slow I was moving, I caught this look flash across his face. Not concern. It was more like calculation. Like he was already doing math in his head. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. On the morning I was discharged, Mr. Pierce came to pick me up personally. He didn't ask how I was feeling. He just looked at me and said, "Ready?" And I knew what he meant. He meant ready to do what we'd been talking about for years, the thing I'd never had the guts to actually pull the trigger on. I nodded. We drove to his office in silence. The whole way there, I was thinking about Eleanor, wondering what she'd say about what I was about to do. Whether she'd think I was making the right choice or whether I was about to become the kind of man she always worried I'd turn into. Someone eaten up by resentment and revenge. But then I thought about something else. I thought about every worker I had. Every single person who showed up to Clark Metalworks day after day, year after year, building the empire that Derek and Marissa wanted to strip mine for cash. Those people had families. Kids who needed school clothes. Mortgages. Dreams. And I'd built something that was supposed to take care of them. Not let them get thrown away like yesterday's trash. When we got to Pierce's office, he poured 2 glasses of water and sat behind his massive desk. He said, "Walter, this is the last chance to walk away. Once we do this, there's no undoing it. Your son." I cut him off. My son made his choice the day he decided money mattered more than respect. Pierce nodded. He'd been waiting to hear me say it. We spent the next 8 hours building something beautiful. Not revenge, exactly. Justice disguised as mercy. A second will. A hidden will. One that nobody would ever see until the moment I was gone, and they were all gathered around thinking about dividing up my life's work like hyenas. I signed every page. Initialed every condition. And when it was done, Pierce placed the sealed envelope in a vault with instructions that it wouldn't be opened until the official will was read in front of everyone. He asked me one more time, "Are you sure?" I looked at that envelope and I thought about Marissa's pearl-white coat and her calculating eyes. I thought about my son firing off emails to private equity vultures while I was trying to rebuild my legacy. I thought about 4 years of silence. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. And just like that, the trap was set. Now all I had to do was wait for them to walk into it. The weeks between signing that will and my 71st birthday were strange. I was healing physically, getting stronger every day. The stroke had been a warning, but it hadn't finished the job. I had time. More time than anybody expected. And I used every single day of it. I went back to the workshop. I walked the factory floor. I looked every employee in the eye and I told them I saw them. That their work mattered. That I was thinking about their futures. Most of them didn't understand what I meant. How could they? But I knew. And that was enough. Derek tried calling a few times. Left messages about settling things and moving forward. I didn't call him back. Let him wonder. Let him feel that uncertainty for a while. Let him experience what it's like when someone doesn't immediately jump at your beck and call. Marissa's social media was lighting up. Photos of her at country clubs, her in new designer clothes, her at dinner parties with people I'd never met, all captioned with little hints about exciting new chapters and major changes coming soon. She was already spending money she hadn't inherited yet. Already telling her circle that the Clark fortune was about to become her fortune. I'd see those posts sometimes, and I'd just smile to myself. Mr. Pierce and I had one more conversation 2 days before the reading. He called me up and said, "Walter, I need to ask you something. Are you doing this for them, or are you doing this for you?" That's the kind of question that stops you cold. Because it's a real question. It's not judgment. It's just truth-seeking. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. Then I said, "I'm doing it for the people who actually built this place. The ones who showed up when nobody was watching. The ones who believed in the work, not the paycheck." Derek and Marissa taught me what greed looks like. But they didn't teach me anything new. I already knew. What they did teach me is that some lessons have to be learned the hard way. Pierce was quiet. Then he said, "That's wisdom, Walter." "No," I said. "That's just a man running out of time deciding what his legacy actually means." The night before the reading, I pulled out that old suit. The one I wore to Clark Metalworks' grand opening 50 years ago. It was hanging in the back of my closet like a ghost. The fabric was thin. The stitching was coming loose in places. It smelled like dust and decades. I held it up and I thought about everything that suit had been through. Every triumph. Every struggle. Every moment that mattered and every moment that didn't. That suit knew my bones better than any expensive jacket ever could. I decided right then that I was going to wear it to the reading. Let them see it. Let them mock it if they wanted to. Because that old suit was the truth of who I was. And the truth was about to set me free. The reading was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon at my estate. The conference room had been set up like a courtroom, formal, cold, intimidating. That's what money does to spaces. It sucks out the warmth. Derek arrived first with Marissa, of course. She was wearing that pearl-white coat again, the one that never seemed to wrinkle or show a single flaw. Her nails were done. Her hair was perfect. She looked like she'd already won the lottery and was just here to collect the check. My brother came, my sister, a few cousins who'd suddenly remembered they were family when the news got out that I'd had a stroke. They were all here to see who'd gotten what, to figure out where they stood in the hierarchy of inheritance. I arrived last. I wore the old suit. I buttoned it carefully, deliberately, making sure everyone could see every thread, every frayed edge, every sign of age. When I walked in, the room quieted. People were looking at me, looking at the suit, trying to figure out what statement I was making. Marissa didn't hide it. She leaned over to Derek and I heard her say it, clear as a bell. Couldn't even afford a new jacket, huh? People laughed. Some tried to hide it. Some didn't. Derek smiled that weak smile of his, like he was embarrassed to be seen with me. And in that moment, something crystallized in me. This was exactly what I needed to see. This exact confirmation that I'd made the right choice. I took my seat at the end of the table. Silent. Composed. Inside, I was thinking about what was about to happen. About how these people's faces were going to change. About how that pearl-white coat wasn't going to help Marissa one bit in about 5 minutes. Mr. Pierce walked in wearing a suit that actually fit. He looked at me once, just a quick glance, and then he moved to the head of the table. He cleared his throat and said the words that would change everything. As per Mr. Clark's final instructions, we will now proceed with the reading of his last will and testament. The energy in the room shifted. People sat up straighter. The cousins leaned forward. Marissa's eyes got bright with dollar signs. Pierce started with the public will, the fake one we'd drawn up months before. To my son, Derek Clark, I leave the family home and my shares in Clark Metalworks. Marissa's lips curved into that smug smile. I could practically see her already redesigning the house in her mind. Then Pierce said the words that changed everything, as long as he fulfills the condition attached. The smile froze on her face. Should my son fail to meet the moral condition, to show consistent respect and integrity toward the Clark legacy, the entirety of my estate, including Clark Metalworks and all related assets, shall be transferred to my chosen successor. People started whispering. Derek's face was getting red. He was trying to process what he was hearing. A condition? A moral condition? What did that even mean? Pierce lifted a sealed envelope from his briefcase. The room went completely silent. This envelope contains the decision regarding the successor, signed and notarized after Mr. Clark's recovery from his stroke, he said, and he looked right at me. Mr. Clark, are you sure you want me to proceed? I nodded. One simple nod. And Pierce opened that envelope like he was opening Pandora's box. The words came out slow and measured. Mr. Pierce read them like he was reading scripture. The entire estate, all $55 million of it, is hereby transferred to the Clark Workers Foundation, a trust established to support the employees who built this company from the ground up. The room exploded. Not with celebration. With chaos. Derek shot up from his chair so fast it fell backward. What? That's ridiculous. That's not. You can't. It's done, Pierce said calmly. It's notarized, witnessed, and legally binding. Marissa's face went from pink to red to white, like someone was draining the blood out of her. She was shaking. Actually shaking. Her voice came out in this high-pitched thing that wasn't quite a voice. This has to be a mistake. Pierce smiled faintly. It was the kind of smile you give when you've been waiting a long time to deliver bad news to the right people. It's no mistake, ma'am. In fact, there's one more thing. Mr. Clark left personal notes to be read aloud. He pulled out a sealed letter. My handwriting on the front. He opened it, and he read it like he was reading my will from beyond the grave, even though I was sitting right there in that old suit, watching everything fall apart. To my son, Derek, he read, I'm leaving you the memory of what we could have been, and the chance to be better than you've chosen to be. That's worth more than any amount of money, if you ever figure that out. Derek was shaking now too. Tears were running down his face. But I couldn't tell if they were tears of shame or tears of rage. Then Pierce read the letter to Marissa. His voice didn't change. He just kept going like he'd practiced this 1,000 times. And maybe he had. Marissa, the measure of a person isn't found in their clothes, but in their character. I built this empire in this old suit you mocked today. Every stitch, every fray, every worn edge represents a choice I made, to build something meaningful instead of something flashy. While you laughed, I remembered every man who worked for me, sweating through summers, bleeding through winters to keep this company alive. They were my family when mine forgot how to respect me. So this fortune, my life's work, belongs to them. The room was so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. Marissa stood up. Her hands were balled into fists. Her face was contorted with something that looked like rage and desperation mixed together. She looked at Derek like she was asking him what he was going to do about this. Like he was supposed to fix it somehow. But there was nothing to fix. It was done. I stood up slowly. I buttoned that old jacket one more time, making sure everyone was watching, making sure they understood the symbolism. That suit had just inherited a $55 million company's worth of respect. And I was about to walk out of that room with my head held high. Some things can't be bought, I said, and my voice filled that whole conference room like it had been waiting to be heard for years. Decency, gratitude, respect. You either have them or you don't. I looked at my son. I looked at his wife. I looked at all the relatives who'd shown up hoping for a payday. And then I buttoned my jacket, turned around, and I walked out of that room. Each step echoed through the hallway like I was walking through history itself. Behind me, I could hear Derek saying my name. I could hear Marissa's voice cracking. I could hear the chaos of a family falling apart in real time. But I didn't turn around. Some endings aren't meant to be negotiated. Outside, the October air hit me like a fresh start. The sun was starting to go down, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Mr. Pierce walked out behind me and stood on the porch, and neither of us said anything for a long time. Then he said, "That was quite the statement." I smiled. Not because I was happy exactly, but because I was finally at peace. I didn't build a company to make my son rich, Harland. I built it to make sure no honest man ever goes home hungry. Today, I finally remembered what that meant. Pierce nodded. He understood. He'd been around me long enough to know that this wasn't about revenge. This was about redemption, mine, and maybe eventually theirs. People are going to call you cruel, he said. They're going to say you were too harsh. Let them, I said. I'm 71 years old. I'm done explaining myself to people who never wanted to understand me in the first place. In the weeks that followed, the story spread. Small town at first, then bigger. The old man who left millions not to his family, but to the workers who'd built his company. Some people thought I was a hero. Some thought I was a fool. Some thought I was a man exacting revenge disguised as justice. But here's the truth. I was just a man who finally decided his principles were worth more than keeping the peace. 3 months later, Derek reached out. No text, no email. He actually called. His voice was different, quieter, smaller, like he'd aged 10 years in those few months. "Dad," he said, "I want to apologize. I want to see you." We met for coffee on a Saturday morning at the same diner where I'd first met Eleanor all those years ago. He looked worn down. Marissa had left him, took about half of what he had left, and moved to California with some real estate developer. Turns out she loved the fortune more than she loved my son. Derek cried. He told me he'd been thinking about everything, about how he'd abandoned me when the pressure got real, how he'd let Marissa influence him into becoming someone he didn't recognize, how he'd forgotten the lessons Eleanor and I had taught him about what actually matters. I listened. And then I reached across the table and I held his hand, the way I used to do when he was small and afraid of the dark. "We're going to be okay," I told him. "But it's going to take work. It's going to take you choosing respect over money, family over status, principles over pride." He nodded. There were tears in his eyes, but there was also something else, something that looked like understanding finally breaking through. As for the company, the Clark Workers Foundation took over immediately. Every single employee got a raise. Health insurance was expanded. Retirement plans were funded. Scholarships were created for their kids. The factory that had been my entire life became a beacon for what businesses could be when they actually cared about the people who made them run. I still visit sometimes. I walk the floor and I see the difference. I see people who know they're valued, who know their work means something, who go home at night and tell their families, "We're going to be okay. We're taken care of." That's the real fortune. That's what all those millions were actually for. As I get older, I don't think about the money anymore. I don't think about winning or losing or getting even. I think about the night Eleanor and I sat in our tiny apartment and she said, "I believe in you." I think about my father telling me you know a man by how he treats you when he doesn't need you. I think about all the years of building something that mattered. Money doesn't reveal character. It amplifies it. The truly rich are those who can still stand tall when everything else is stripped away. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't taking back what's yours, it's showing them that they never truly had anything worth keeping in the first place. If this story moved your heart, if it made you think about what really matters, then I need you to do something for me. Subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next story, because there are more like this one coming. Stories about love and loss and standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. And leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me what respect means to you. Tell me about a time you had to choose between what was easy and what was right. Your stories matter. They inspire others who are watching, trying to figure out if they have the courage to make a hard choice themselves. You do. If Walter Clark could do it, so can you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing that dignity still matters. And I'll see you in the next story.